with our feature on the show today. Now, the Senate and the House of Representatives has already commenced the examination of the 13.08 trillion naira 2020 budget estimated and submitted by the President to a joint session of the National Assembly just last week. Chief Whip Orji Uzor-Kalu in his contribution says that there's nothing wrong with the federal government borrowing to fund the budget, citing when a country goes into recession, it must borrow to finance projects. Meanwhile, Senate Minority Leader Inaya Abaribe also says that the document has already flagged the administration of President Buhari for overburdening the people with taxes, saying the 2021 budget is based on things that are unrealistic. Well, joining me now to discuss the Senate and House of Representatives stance and a further breakdown of the 2021 Appropriation Bill is senior economist with the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, Wilson Erumebo. Good to have you on the Breakfast Show this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Wilson, managing borrowing was one of the major highlights during the examination, and in terms of debt service, government has already provisioned 3.12 trillion naira for the year 2021. This represents an increase of 445.5 billion naira. What do you make of both stands? The chief whip and then the minority leader. One supports the borrowing plan. The other says that we should have more generating agencies do more and then not overburden the masses with taxes.
Well, both plans are very much valid. And one thing with 2020 this year is the fact that we all know we've been hit so badly by the COVID pandemic. We had a series of shutdown. We also had a situation where crude oil price and output were affected. Oil price went to as low as $9 per barrel in April. And then OPEC had to implement some output quotas for some of its member countries, which Nigeria is part of, and that also saw kind of like a slowdown in output expansion for Nigeria. So what that basically means is that oil revenues for this year simply it won't be as as the target that we set. We won't be able to reach the target. But that said, from the non-oil aspect as well, we've seen because of COVID, businesses have been affected in terms of their revenues. So is this now the best time to keep taxing and increasing taxes on businesses? Of course not. So what I think we need to do, and one other point to make is the fact that we've gotten to a point where our options are being narrowed as we keep going further, because so many of the reforms that I believe we should have done probably in the last 3, 5, 7 years ago. We've not done that. So as we keep, it's like you're at the base of a triangle, and as you keep going up to the tip, your options keep narrowing and narrowing. So it leaves us to options of maybe just seeing how we can borrow. But that said, on the revenue part, I think there's still a lot more that we can do, particularly in blocking leakages, particularly in streamlining the focus of certain government agencies, and in ensuring that whatever comes into government coffers, is actually the actual amount that we should expect, and then there's transparency and accountability. I think we need to do a lot more reforms in that aspect.
Now, let's also do a further breakdown of the budget now. At the end of the day, looking at the key assumptions, the country's oil price benchmark is pegged at about $40 per barrel, oil production target of 1.86 barrels per day with an exchange rate of 379 naira per dollar. Do you think this is way too optimistic? So many say, well, cautious optimism should rather be the sentiment the government should go with.
Well, I think it is quite optimistic, particularly with the oil price. I mean, who would have thought that oil price would get to $9 per barrel in April, and even the WTI futures traded in the negative earlier in the year. So I think for an ideal Nigeria, I mean, when we will get to that point, we need to start seeing how we can, in a large way, discount crude oil from all our plans. I mean, there's every possibility that crude oil could even go further. I mean, all we need is just one or two shocks from, maybe one country or maybe even a resurgence of the pandemic itself. You could have a situation where crude oil price would drop below $40 per barrel. And we started the year with 57, with a benchmark price of 57. That's this year's 2020 budget. I mean, and you can see the gap between 57 and $9 in April. By the time you average for the year, probably were around $40. So there's a huge gap, and because of that, we had to revise the budget about 3 times. So to avoid some of these, I think it would have been more realistic to assume a lower price for crude oil, especially because of the uncertainty that surrounds it. And again, you know that budget is driven by assumptions. The moment one of your assumptions become unrealistic, it affects even the implementation of the budget, whether you're talking about capital projects. I mean, this year, for instance, from January to August, according to some of the reports we've been seeing, we've only implemented just around 40% of our capital budget.
Okay.
And part of the reason is due to revenue shortfalls and all. So I think we can be more realistic with our budget and look how we can move away from reliance on crude oil
Okay.
to having more realistic targets.
Okay, definitely. And in looking at realistic targets, we also have to look at the cost of governance and also try as much as possible to limit the leakages. By the end of the day, it remains a forecast, it remains assumption, and it's open to changes here and there. Thank you very much for your contribution on the Breakfast Show today, Wilson Arumebo.